Voiceover. What if the government could decide which medical treatments your child can receive, even if doctors recommend them? What if a constitutional right depended entirely on the state where you live? On June 18, 2025, the United States Supreme Court delivered a decision that may reshape the meaning of equal protection under the 14th Amendment. Supporters call it a necessary protection for children. Critics call it one of the most consequential civil rights setbacks in decades. The case is called United States versus Skrmetti, and its impact may extend far beyond healthcare. Part 1. Why this case matters. For decades, Americans generally believe that constitutional rights should not dramatically change when crossing a state border. But this case raises a difficult question. Can states restrict a medical treatment for one group of people while allowing the same treatment for another group? That question reached the highest court in the nation, and the answer may surprise you. Part 2, the decision. The Supreme Court reviewed a Tennessee law prohibiting certain gender-affirming medical treatments for minors. The challenge argued that the law violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. However, the court disagreed. Instead of applying a stricter constitutional test often used in discrimination cases, the court used a much more deferential rational basis test. That single legal choice became the heart of the entire decision. Part 3. The legal earthquake. Most people have never heard of the rational basis test. Yet this doctrine may determine whether a law survives constitutional challenge. Under this standard, a law will generally be upheld if lawmakers can show any reasonable connection between a law and a legitimate governmental objective. In practical terms, it is one of the easiest constitutional standards for a government to satisfy. And that is precisely why the ruling attracted nationwide attention. Part 4. The clinical paradox. Critics point to what they call a clinical paradox. Imagine two patients, the same medication, the same dosage, the same doctor, yet the treatment is allowed for one patient and prohibited for another because of the condition being treated. Supporters argue this distinction is medically justified. Opponents argue it creates unequal treatment under the law. This disagreement now sits at the center of America's constitutional debate. Part 5. Parental rights. The ruling also reignited a long-standing question. Who ultimately decides a child's medical care? Parents? Doctors? Or the state? Some courts have begun relying on similar legal reasoning to conclude that parental authority in this area is not unlimited when state regulations apply. For many families, this issue reaches far beyond politics. It strikes at the heart of parental decision-making itself. Part 6. A nation divided. The consequences are not uniform across America. In some states, these treatments remain available. In others, they are restricted or prohibited. As a result, access to healthcare may now depend heavily on geography. For many Americans, constitutional protections increasingly appear different depending on where they live. Part 7. Why the world is watching. This case has attracted attention far beyond the United States. The Research Center of the Supreme Court of Pakistan referenced a decision in its quarterly case law update, recognizing its significance in contemporary constitutional jurisprudence. That recognition highlights a simple reality. The implications of this ruling are being studied not only in America, but across the international legal community. Powerful ending voiceover. So what does United States versus Skrmetti really mean? Is it a legitimate exercise of state authority? Or does it signal a new chapter in how constitutional equality is interpreted? History will ultimately decide. But one fact is already clear. This decision has reopened one of the most important constitutional debates of our generation. And regardless of where you stand politically, the outcome may shape the future of liberty, parental rights, healthcare regulation, and equal protection for years to come. If you value informed legal discussion and constitutional analysis, subscribe to the channel and join the conversation. Why this version will perform better higher, click-through rate, CTR. The clinical paradox, approximate, for 36 to 545. Let's pause for a moment and think about one of the most controversial aspects of this case. Many legal experts refer to it as the clinical paradox. What does that mean? Imagine two young patients visiting the same doctor. The doctor prescribes the same medication. The dosage is the same. The medicine is the same. The medical supervision is the same. But under certain state laws, one child may legally receive that treatment, while another may not. Supporters of these laws argue that the difference lies in the medical condition being treated. Critics argue that the outcome feels unequal because the medication itself has not changed. This disagreement sits at the heart of the constitutional debate, and it is one of the reasons the Skrmetti decision has generated such intense discussion across the United States. Part 5, Parental Rights, Approximate, 545 to 655. Another major question raised by this case concerns parental rights. For generations, parents have generally been responsible for making medical decisions for their children. Families consult doctors. Doctors provide recommendations. Parents decide what they believe is best. But what happens when the state steps in and says certain medical options are no longer available? That is the question many families are now asking. Supporters of state restrictions argue that governments have a duty to protect children when medical questions remain controversial. Opponents argue that parents, working together with qualified physicians, should retain the primary role in making healthcare decisions. As courts continue to address these issues, the balance between parental authority and government regulation remains one of the most important legal debates of our time. Part 6, A Nation Divided, Approximate, 6:55 to 8 o'clock. The effects of the Skrmetti decision extend beyond courtrooms. They can now be seen across the map of the United States. In some states, access to certain medical treatments remains available. In other states, restrictions are now in place. As a result, families may face very different legal realities depending on where they live. A treatment considered lawful in one state may be prohibited in another. This growing difference has led many observers to describe America as a nation divided by legal boundaries. For some people, these differences represent the proper role of federalism, allowing states to make their own decisions. For others, they raise concerns about whether constitutional protections should vary from one state to another. Regardless of where one stands, there is no denying that geography now plays an increasingly important role in this debate. Part 7, Beyond Minors, Approximate, 8 to 8:50. Although the Skrmetti case focused on minors, many legal observers have been asking another important question. Could the reasoning behind this decision influence future cases involving adults? Some courts and policymakers have already begun examining how similar legal arguments might affect healthcare coverage, insurance policies, and government programs. Supporters view this as a reasonable extension of state authority. Critics worry that it could lead to broader restrictions in the future. At this stage, many legal questions remain unresolved. But one thing is certain: the discussion surrounding Skrmetti is far from over. Part 8, International Attention, Approximate, 8:50 to 9:35. What makes this case even more remarkable is that people outside the United States are paying attention. Legal scholars, researchers, and judicial institutions around the world are studying the decision and its implications. Among those taking notice was the Research Center of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. The case was referenced in its quarterly case law update as a significant constitutional development. This does not mean foreign courts are adopting the decision. Rather, it demonstrates how closely the international legal community watches important constitutional rulings from the United States. Major court decisions often influence legal discussions far beyond national borders, and Skrmetti is no exception. Conclusion, Approximate, 9:35 to 10:11. So, where does America go from here? The answer remains uncertain. Supporters believe the Supreme Court correctly respected the authority of elected state governments. Critics believe the ruling may weaken constitutional protections for certain groups. Only time will reveal the full impact of this landmark decision. But one fact is already clear. United States versus Skrmetti has reopened a national conversation about equality, parental rights, healthcare regulation, and the meaning of constitutional liberty. The debate is likely to continue for many years to come. If you found this analysis informative, please subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more discussions on landmark court decisions shaping the future of law and society. Thank you for watching.